Minister, this question relates to the TTIP, and I think it's an absolute disgrace that we're going into the recess without a comprehensive discussion in this Parliament about the wide-scale implications it's going to have. Now, Minister, previously you have made repeated claims that this is going to have a wonderful impact on our jobs, on GDP growth rates. You told us in 2013 it was going to create 2 million jobs, put an extra €500 in the pockets of every family of four. Earlier this year you said it was going to create 400,000 jobs. I'm wondering, are you satisfied with the credibility of the reports that you're relying on these outlandish statements?
Thank you. Minister, number 5.
Well, first of all, I would point out to the Deputy that we did have a comprehensive discussion in the Oireachtas here. Three of the Oireachtas committees jointly met together, and we had an extensive discussion with questions and answers, and a much more meaningful exchange than you would have in here, to be honest, because people were able to raise their concerns. It ran on for several hours and was very fruitful, and all shades of opinion were available. We've also, to be fair, had numerous other fora where both sponsored by my department and others, where these issues have been discussed. On the issue of the evaluation, I mean, the European Commission's assessment of the likely benefits of the EU-US trade negotiations is based on an analysis carried out by the Centre for Economic Policy Research, a leading independent pan-European economic research organisation. The study commissioned by my department of the potential impact in Ireland was prepared by Copenhagen Economics, independent or external experts in the field. The study is based on the best available techniques of economic modelling and uses the same model and methodology as the Commission study to facilitate direct comparison. It shows, based on reasonable assumptions, that the potential gain of 2.4 billion in national income, over €1,200 per family, is possible from an ambitious agreement. These studies use a general equilibrium model, the purpose of which is to simulate the impact of an EU-US trade agreement based on assumptions about the outcome of the negotiations. The model can give important insights into the potential gains from the negotiations and the potential opportunities or challenges for specific sectors. This in turn helps policymakers to frame policies in order to maximise the opportunities and mitigate the challenges. Bearing in mind the limitations of all economic modelling, I believe these studies provide important insights and add to our understanding of the potential of the EU-US trade negotiations. For Ireland, the studies show significant opportunity in important sectors like pharmaceuticals, medical devices, food, especially dairy, software and public procurement. These represent an important and growing part of our exporting economy.
Minister, all of the studies cited by you are based on computable general equilibrium modelling techniques, and as you say, the general equilibrium theory which underpins it. These studies have been widely discredited by sociologists, by most economists, with the exception of the neoclassical ones who are wedded to the neoliberal agenda. The methods used really by these groups, as has been defined by some, are fictional expectations as to GDP and jobs growth that will come as a result of the TTIP. Now, it's not just me saying this, even sort of not so radical organisations like The Economist, which stated that these models, if the modeller believes that trade raises productivity and growth, then the model's result will mechanically confirm this. It's very like what you call in computer terms garbage in, garbage out. And it's a little bit like the predictions that we were told that austerity was going to deliver magnificent growth rates for Europe, when in reality austerity has delivered the opposite, but very much supported the idea of deregulating Europe, of privatisation, of lowering workers' living standards and so on. So I'd ask you again, Minister, in light of that, and even actually by the European Commission itself has said that it's just ballpark figures, that you might want to revise your attitude to these studies.
Minister.
Well, I think the truth is that economies need growth strategies, and in the case of Ireland, our growth strategy has been very much based on export-led recovery. In the case of our dealings with the US, we have 70%, that's 125,000 people are employed by US companies here in Ireland. In the case of Irish companies, $2 billion of trade is done with US companies, and both of those categories have grown rapidly. So Ireland has used our trade links in the last number of years to beat the pressures that were coming from declining domestic demand and the crisis that occurred in public finances in banking. And we've done so successfully. That growth strategy has Ireland now at the top of the league in terms of growth, employment growth, GDP growth, export growth, and we are successfully managing that. Clearly, the reduction of trade barriers in the US is good for Irish people because we have very strong trade links and can build on reduced tariffs, reduced non-trade barriers and better coordination of regulation. Those are areas where we can gain. And this model seeks to say what would be the impact of a reduction in tariffs, of non-trade barriers, and they naturally imply gains for Ireland, which trade heavily in these markets.
Deputy Clare Daly.
I think the problem, Minister, is that your predictions, which you're so confidently making, are a nonsense in the context of these models. And I don't say that in a derogatory way. I say it because the same rationale was used, for example, to make predictions in relation to other trade agreements, predictions which didn't materialise. There was prophesied greatness in terms of the NAFTA agreement, for example, which didn't materialise at all based on this modelling. Other predictions were revised downwards because they didn't live up to the so-called expectations that were put there. And as Lorenzo Fiamonti claims in his recent book, How Numbers Rule the World, numbers are used and abused to entrench the power of markets and undermine public debate. And I think that's what we've really seen utilised in this so-called debate of the TTIP, which I asked for to be discussed in the chamber here, because 3 committees would not be an adequate airing given the impact of it here. And isn't it really just part and parcel of the neoliberal agenda to, as you say, deregulate everything, liberalise everything, and the consequences of which are environmental devastation, the destruction of workers' rights and the welfare state, while those at the top and with the money can scoop up the profits and line their own pockets.
Thank you, Minister, to conclude.
The truth is, any free trade agreement offers opportunities for sectors to grow. In the case of Ireland and the US, there are ample and clear evidence. I mean, for example, our whole growth in software and business services, the vast majority, 60% of that growth has been in the US market. That is a very strong market for us, and if there can be better access to that market, we can gain from it. But of course, to take advantage of any trade agreement, you have to put in place the policies necessary. And that's why it's important that we do an evaluation of this nature, which models where the potential opportunities are. So we can now set about looking at how do we exploit the opportunities in food that will arise, in medical devices, in software, in public procurement. And we can prepare for areas where there are potential threats. And that's the advantage of these models. And Ireland has proven over many years that we are good and adept at winning in international markets. We're a small open trading economy. We depend on trade agreements. And I think if you look at the evidence of the Korean free trade agreement, where trade between Europe and Korea has trebled as a result of the opening up of that agreement, you can see the benefits that are there to be realised.
Now, other questions, Deputy Derek Leary.